Amendment Liberal 19. It's actually a new clause, not 193.1. Who's Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this proposed amendment would provide certainty and timing for Canadians and the industry that edibles containing cannabis and cannabis concentrates would be authorized for sale no more than 12 months after the coming into force date of the proposed Cannabis Act. So we heard from many witnesses that having edibles as part of the legalization of cannabis was important. We heard from public health that limiting legalized cannabis to dried forms would encourage smoking, and there's significant public health consequences associated with smoking cannabis. We also heard from many consumer groups and users that they felt that having edibles was an important piece of them being able to properly utilize the drug. We also heard, though, from other jurisdictions that it was important to go slow to make sure that there was time, that we had time to get this right, and we heard that from other jurisdictions that had legalized it. And we also heard from representatives of government that there was work to be done in regs, work to be done in other bills that would have to be finished and completed to properly implement this. But having said that, I still think we should be making the amendment that within 12 months, edibles would be available 12 months after the bill comes into force. So that's in a nutshell what this motion does. And there's a companion motion with it that comes up, I think, in a couple of motions to deal with the rest of that.
Thank you. Mr. Davies.
Well, I appreciate the movement from the Liberals on this. I have a question, and then I'm going to speak to the amendment. Mr. Oliver, if I understand correctly, you're saying that edibles would have to be legalized and concentrates within 1 year of coming into force of the bill?
Authorized for sale no more than 12 months after the coming into force date of the proposed Cannabis Act.
Okay, I'm looking at motion 19. I see that it adds, it simply adds these products to the part 12.1, the Schedule 4. I don't see the reference to the 12 months.
So sorry, this is to understand why we're adding this, because otherwise it would look like we're just legalizing it as of the date it comes into force. So this is the accompanying motion is Liberal 21 that establishes the 12-month
the timing.
The 12-month time scale.
I see. So this motion here, Liberal 19, simply is it puts them on the schedule. Correct. And your companion motion will make it within 12 months. Okay.
That's correct.
Well, if I may just speak to the motion then, if I may, I think. But for the waiting 12 months, I think it's an excellent motion. For a number of reasons. We are the Health Committee, and the thing about edibles and concentrates and non-smokable forms of cannabis is that it's a healthier way to ingest cannabis than smoking. And so it's ironic that we're going to be legalizing the one form of cannabis that is most heavily ingested by smoking and not legalizing the other forms of cannabis that present less of a harmful health impact, at least in the respiratory system. The thing about regulating edibles, of course, is that it allows us to regulated, properly supervised businesses to control the dosages and to control the titration to make sure that there's uniformity of THC and CBD and the other chemicals in the product. It allows us to apply the labeling requirements, and we all agree and understand that we want to make sure that the labeling of all products, particularly edibles, are not marketed towards children, that they're contained in single-serving packages, that they're in child-proof containers, that they're properly labeled and marked. And most importantly, of course, it's to make sure that we take these products out of the hands of the black market. So while we wait the 12 months, Canadians are still going to be getting edibles, but they're going to be getting it from sources that are completely unregulated. I wanted to refer to an article that was in the National Post that ran on September 26th, a few days ago, and it said there's a report that's come out released by Dalhousie University last Tuesday that said that 68% of people agreed or strongly agreed with legalizing recreational cannabis, and another 45.8% agreed that they would buy marijuana-infused food products if they hit the Canadian market, and that 46.1% would opt for bakery products such as brownies or muffins. 65.6% of respondents said they don't know enough about marijuana to cook with it on their own. One of the dangers of this legislation and waiting a year, of course, is that it leaves Canadians to cook their own edibles on their own without any controls over titration or dosage, and of course leaving them to obtain their products through the black market. So I congratulate the Liberal side for moving on edibles, and I'm going to vote and support that motion accordingly. I want to go on the record as saying there is no reason whatsoever to go slow on this, because there's nothing that we're going to be learning in the next year about these products that we don't know now. We know other jurisdictions, including Colorado, Washington, Alaska, and others, they have years of experience in regulating edibles. We know the errors that they made have been repaired, and we already have best practices, gold standards of regulatory directions as to how to regulate these products well. And my last point, of course, will be, as I've said before, it's given that there's no real reason to wait on regulating edibles, given that we won't be learning anything new, given that we know that what the aspects of regulation around edibles, sound regulation consists of. All we're doing by waiting that year is giving organized crime another year to make these products, and subjecting Canadians to another year of obtaining products that have no regulation whatsoever. And as a member of the Health Committee, I can't support that as being a wise approach to health. I will support this motion because it's, as my father said, wisdom comes so seldomly, it shouldn't be rejected because it comes late. But I would re-emphasize that I see no reason that we shouldn't be amending this act now to put edibles into the schedule now.
Thanks very much. I just want to say that you just asked for this a minute ago in question period, and here it is. I mean, you can't ask for better than that. So, Mr. Oliver.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to ask more often in question period.
So, I hear Mr. Davies' urgency to move forward with this. We did hear from witnesses from the ministry that there are complex regulations that need to be written and brought to force on this, and they said they would not have those ready within the time frame of the bill coming into force. So I do think it's important. I had mentioned at the outset that the importance of edibles was around public health and moving people away from smoking, around consumer choice, but I forgot to mention, and Mr. Davies appropriately raised it, that this is part of the black market's business, and it's important that edibles come to market quickly so that we continue to deter and restrict the opportunities for organized crime to be working in this space. And I do think that with a year to go, it gives the industry and Canadians lots of time to know it's coming, and I think it's an appropriate motion given where we are.
Seeing no more comments, I call for a vote on Liberal 19. All in favor of Liberal 19? In favor? Oh, sure, we have a recorded vote. I never thought of that.
Monsieur Ayoub.
Oui.
Mr. Yolson. Mr. McKinnon. Mr. Oliver.
Yes.
Ms. Sidhu. Ms. Gladue.
No.
Mr. Van Kesteren.
No.
Mr. Weber.
No.
Mr. Davies.
Yes.
Okay, I declare Liberal 19 carried. Now we go to
Mr. Chair, could I just ask a procedural question?
Sure.
I have a motion coming up to put edibles on the schedule now, and I'm just wondering from our Legislative Council, does this motion that we just passed make that moot, or does it retain its viability because it would be different in the sense that it would put edibles in the schedule upon passage of this bill? Or you can think about that and we can wait and until we get to that part of the legislation.
What motion is it that you're talking about?
Well, I have a motion later on when we get to schedule, I think it's Schedule 4, to add edibles to the legislation now. And we've just passed a motion that I guess when it's fully perfected would add edibles to the legislation 1 year after it comes into force. My own view is that those are two separate things, and we still can have a vote on adding edibles now, because I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
When you get ready to make your motion, we'll make the
Okay.
motion and deal with it.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you're welcome.